today with Professor Joanne Marshall, who's the Alumni Distinguished Professor here in the School of Information and Library Science at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you.
Well, let's start by, why don't you tell us a little bit about the many roles you have here at the university?
Okay, well, I have, I guess, what probably looks from the outside a number of different interests, but they are in fact related. One of the most recent, but I think it's something that characterizes my whole career, is this notion of evidence-based library and information practice. So in May of 2007, we hosted the 4th International Conference on Evidence-Based Library and Information Practice, which we called EBLIP4, and the website is eblip4.nc.edu, right? And the papers are posted there. But basically this is an attempt to really improve the link between research and practice in the field of library and information science. And we're not unlike other professions in that, you know, we have the practitioners and we have the researchers, and often the twain don't meet very often. So this is something that is really an international movement, I would say, in the field. It started, the first conference was in the UK. It's held every 2 years. The second one was in Canada. The third one was in Australia. The fourth one was here in Chapel Hill. And the fifth one will actually be in 2009 in Sweden. So there are library and information professionals all over the world who are, you know, I think starting to realize that if we can make a stronger link between research and practice, and in many fields this is called evidence-based practice, right. It really came out of the field of medicine originally, then as a profession, as a field, we will move ahead much more quickly. So that's something I think that has interested me for a very long time. It relates back to one of my other major interests, which is in health information. Right. And I worked for 12 years as a health sciences librarian at McMaster University in Canada. And McMaster was one of the places which founded the whole idea of evidence-based medicine and the idea of linking research to practice in the health professions. So I was part of the team, the library team, that worked with the clinical epidemiology department to develop a lot of the early searches for evidence in the Medline database. And at that time, I think it never occurred to any of us that we should think what the implications of this were for us as a profession. And we were very involved, health sciences librarians, over the years in providing evidence to the whole range of health professions, not just medicine, but nursing, allied health professions, you know, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, and so forth, and helping them to find the best evidence for the clinical decisions that they had to make. And then gradually, I think, the light dawned and we realized, well, if that profession is doing evidence-based practice, why aren't we? And you see it being adopted by other professions such as social work, even business. There's a book out now on evidence. There's an article in the Harvard Business Review on evidence-based management. So it's something that's starting to take off. Now I think the name evidence-based practice, it's got more of a ring to it perhaps than research. That's, everyone remembers perhaps their research methods course, and when where the eyes glazed over, right? But if you talk about evidence-based practice, then it may have more appeal to practitioners. But I think the underlying essence of this is the link of research to practice. The name may change, but I don't think this concept is ever going to disappear. And if you look at the professions that are really powerful and have more clout in society than we currently do as library and information professionals, I think you can see it's the ones that have the strongest scientific evidence base and are able to apply that to their work. So, you know, to my mind, it's a great endeavor, and I think something will last far beyond my career. But I was really glad that we were able to host this conference in 2007 in Chapel Hill, and it really was a very exciting research conference. And I just got back also from the Medical Library Association meeting, which is probably one of the most research-oriented of the library associations. But even there, it's a struggle to have more peer-reviewed contributed papers on the program versus invited sessions and things like that. So, you know, this is my my long-term dream, is that during my tenure, I guess, in the field, that we can really move forward with this idea. And I love general ideas that can be applied in a whole bunch of different settings, and this is one that I think it can be. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't keep trying to do what we do as library and information professionals and provide service to others and help them to find and use their evidence base, but it's time we started looking at our own. And that's been slow in coming, but I really feel it's starting to take off. So that's been very exciting. So that's one area, and I have Carol Perryman, a very talented doctoral student, working with me in that area. So we're starting to get a very nice group of students working in that area. and we'll have to see where that goes. So I mentioned earlier that I worked for 12 years as a health sciences librarian, and then actually in other healthcare settings too over the years, and so that's my primary subject domain. And I've been very involved with the Health Sciences Library here at UNC,
right.
developing a database called nchealthinfo.org, if people want to find it on the internet. It's basically a first place to go for health information related to North Carolina. And when I came here in 1999 to UNC, I became very aware of the mission of this university to serve the people of the state. And I feel that this is a project that really does that. That basically, the way it started was that the National Library of Medicine put out a call for projects in what we call consumer health information. It's very strange to me that when you think of health information, the default is to health information for healthcare providers. But in fact, the biggest users of health information are all of us, because all of us are going to be seeking health information at some point. So, but we call that area within our field consumer health information. So they put out this call, and I was, we were brainstorming this whole notion of, consumer health information, what can we do that serves the people of North Carolina? And we came up with this idea that we could build a database and seamlessly interface it with the Medline Plus service at the National Library of Medicine. And so we came up basically with the beta version of this. It's now been adopted in many different states, slightly different versions depending on their own needs. But I'm very pleased with that project has been so influential. And we've been able to, of course, publish some articles out of that. And it's continuing on. It's evolving into a more comprehensive portal for health information for the people of North Carolina. And that we've now got involvement in the state library in this as well. And it's a joint project now of UNC, of Duke University, and the State Library. So it's really nice to see these projects kind of grow and evolve. And I was involved as well. I came from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and we had received a large grant from our Ministry of Health there to develop a provincial consumer health information service. So it evolves out of that. And so my interest in health information really continues. I just find it so exciting, and I feel it's very relevant for me and my family, and it's relevant for everybody. And I'm getting more and more interested now in the whole linkage of sort of body-mind practice or integrative medicine, it's sometimes called, and all of the systems that I've been involved in building to date, or the health information services, have really been based on this idea that what people need are the facts. Where can they find a doctor? Where can they find a respite service if their relative has Alzheimer's disease? Where can they find articles, or where are the clinical trials that they might like to participate in, that kind of thing. But there's another whole element that's related to sort of holistic health care, and that is, how do people perceive their health, and then how do they build it in a more holistic fashion, not just seeking out illness care, which is essentially what our health care system is. It's illness care, and acute illness care usually. We don't do so well with the chronic care. And so it seems to me that whole movement towards more integrative medicine, to linking, this body-mind practice idea, has implications for how we develop information services and information systems in the health area. Also, I know you've been involved, Gary, in developing this personal health record. Well, that's another move towards people taking more responsibility for their own health care. And if we think of that going beyond the traditional healthcare system, there are so many wonderful information tools that we could build into those systems. So that's something that continues to intrigue me, and that I'm working on. And I found an interdisciplinary group of colleagues across the campus, actually, and a lot of different departments who are interested in this. So I've always loved sort of cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary things. So, and also to work with people from outside our schools, because I think schools of information and library science, valuable as they are often quite small. Even ours is relatively small given the size of some of the other departments and schools here at UNC. But we can really leverage our strength and our capacity by linking to other programs and forming partnerships with other faculty and students in other departments. An example of that would be we have a lot of dual degrees with other schools, as you know, at UNC, and also North Carolina State University with their public archives program. But now there's an interdisciplinary health communication program, so it's a School of Public Health, School of Journalism and Mass Communication, and School of Information and Library Science. So I'm really interested in fostering those partnerships and building our ability, because ours is a discipline, a field that can be applied in so many different subject domains, and so we're going to have more and more people who are going to want both the subject background in whatever that field is, and also the information and library science background. So that really interests me. And the other area, I guess, when I came, I was in an administrative position for a number of years, and that got me thinking about the bigger picture in the field and what some of the issues are. And I think we have a huge issue, or at least we think we do, with the library and information science workforce. As a profession, library science in particular, is older on average than other professions like medicine, social work, so forth. That has to do, of course, partly with the demographics of our society shifting right now.
Right.
Overall, the baby boomers are getting old.
Right.
First one turned 60 in 2006. So we're all, as a country,
Right.
as a society, all the Western countries have this aging workforce issue. But we are older on average because a lot of people go into this field as a second career. Thank goodness we get some very talented people that way, but that means their lifespan in the profession is shorter, right? They don't, they come in later and don't have as many years in the field. Also, it's still dominated by women, and women often marry men who are older than they are. My daughter just married a man 5 years younger, and I think it's brilliant, but it's not typical. So what do we do about this? We are going to be, if you look at the proportion of librarians retiring in particular, as information science is a much younger field by comparison, but we've also, through this research we've done on a project called Workforce Aging in the New Economy, which is a study of IT workers, 30 in IT is considered old. As soon as you have kids, is considered old. As soon as you don't want to work 24 hours a day is considered old. So they have aging workforce issues as well, but different aging workforce issues. The library science one is more a case of the age of the people in the field right now is chronologically older. And then that raises a whole range of issues as to how do you cope with succession planning and knowledge transfer when you have so many people leaving and so many new entrants coming in. And what kind of workforce do you really need? I mean, do we need the same kind of workforce? It has tremendous implications for schools like ours in terms of what we put in our curriculum. And I don't think we've solved these problems, but our study is going to look at 8,000 graduates, folks who graduated from all of the different library and information science programs in North Carolina between 1964 and 2005. And we're trying to contact as many of them as possible, and it's a career. Basically, we're trying to look at what their careers were like and the factors that led them into the field, the recruitment factors, and also persuaded them to remain in the field. Since we're starting with graduates, we'll also be able to look at people who have left the field and the reasons why they might have done that. But because we're not a licensed profession, we know very, very little about our field, and even some of the best schools do very little tracking of their alumni except to raise money from them.
Of course.
So, which is, I suppose, a good thing. We all want that to happen. But on the other hand, I think that we have a kind of a moral responsibility here to try to understand more about the careers of people who graduate from our programs, partly as a way of workforce planning, but partly so that we can actually do better educational planning and things like that. So that's my other interest, is this whole workforce. And I'm actually melding these things together because I really believe that evidence-based library and information practice, given its characteristics and the way in which it's done, and there's sort of a protocol that one follows when it's trying to be more evidence-based in their practice. It has a lot to do with searching the literature, finding the latest studies, assessing the evidence. Well, new entrants to the field are very good at that. And then you have the more senior people in the field who have a lot of on-the-ground experience. And I think this really has the potential to be used as one of the tools for knowledge transfer. And that's one of the grant proposals that I'm working on now, is to sort of explore that. We're very fortunate that we have the Institute of Museum and Library Services in the U.S., which does fund a certain number of research projects. I'd like to see them fund more. They don't, fund a lot of research, but say compared to Canada, where I come from, and even Britain, where they, their research and development department at the British Library is not what it used to be. So I think, right now we have a particular opportunity to kind of do research that relates to the profession, and I'm very appreciative of that opportunity. So,
That was an excellent sort of overview of four really different, but as you say, integrated sets of interests. Can I go back to the NC Health for a minute? And could you say give some examples of the kinds of resources? I mean, I can understand sort of maybe literature in the standard sort of NLM mesh sort of way, but you're not talking about literature. You're talking about things that people actually need, like what, where the doctors are,
Right.
Or where the hospitals are, things like
the
that.
literature, I have to say, is one component, but only one component of this. And the idea is this should be a place where when people need health resources of some sort, which could be access to health professionals or access to self-help groups or just knowing what's available in their community. And the way NC Health Info is set up, when you go onto the site, there's a map that appears with 100 states in North Carolina. And if you were in the, in the county of Orange,
Right.
did I say 100 states?
Yeah,
I think I meant 100 counties.
Right.
100 counties in North Carolina. So if you're in Orange County and you are interested in, we'll take the example again of respite care for, people who are caring for patients or people with Alzheimer's disease, you can click on there. You can search for respite care opportunities. You could find out who provides care for certain rare diseases. You could find out about the health sciences libraries that provide information to the public. You could provide find out information about various self-help groups. So it's a kind of health services, I would say, as well as health information.
Okay.
But the services have definitely been integrated.
Right.
And we have such a large, complex healthcare system now that we really need some of these portals, which will start to gather these different types of information together. So
Right.
in a way, it's doing that. It's a huge health library, but it's a library of services and it's a library of resources of various kinds. And then, of course, linking to the National Library of Medicine and with their Medline Plus service. I mean, NLM at one point wasn't going to provide any information to the public at all. Now the public's their biggest user at NLM. But they never did want to get down to the state level. So that was sort of the tack we took is, okay, we have to figure out how to do this. And when we did our needs assessments and said to people, what information do you need? The biggest request was, I need to know doctors who treat this particular condition in my community.
Right.
I need access to this kind of self-help group. And I mean, 99% of healthcare is self-care anyway. I mean, we're doing things for ourselves all the time in terms of nutrition, lifestyle, making our own health decisions on a daily basis as to what kind of over-the-counter medications we're going to take or not take. So, all of that needs to be supported. And I just see this again as a work in progress, that needs will always be changing, and given the fact that health information, I think, is really one of the most accessed types of information on the web, I just think there's so much opportunity for this.
How are these resources sort of assessed? Or can anyone just put them in, or is there a librarian who's making a kind of a judgment about the quality, or I mean, how is that handled?
Good question. I mean, that's a very important part, because I really do believe now that, for librarianship in general, it used to be the issue was access to information. Now it's dealing with information glut or information overload.
Right.
So what we need to do is provide quality health information and filter that information and pick things which we think are probably the best representations of that type of information. So every site that we do a lot of searching for sites, but also people can submit their site for inclusion in NC Health Info. There is something called the HAN code, which is a preset list of criteria for evaluating healthcare online sites.
Okay.
And we use the HAN code, but we've augmented it with things about whether we think it's relevant to the particular community and whether we think obviously there's as much bad information, health information on the web as there is good.
Sure,
and we want to make sure it's authoritative, that it's up to date, that the people who created it are identified on that. There are a lot of different criteria that are applied, and we do have a coordinator, but a great deal of the work on this project has been done and continues to be done by SILS students who are hired by the Health Sciences Library. So we're very proud of that connection. So we also actually have a connection to the library at the Environmental Protection Agency, where we've had the contract to run the libraries there for almost 30 years. So
Right.
that's a very exciting thing. So our field experience is I'm involved in field experience as the coordinator right now, and 78% of our students do at least one field experience. 38% the last 3 years have done two. I've got calls on my answering machine right now from field experience students, so it's something that runs 12 months a year here. But I think it's so important for students to get this kind of hands-on experience with real information systems, with real people seeking health information, or any type of information, really.
So it's fascinating that this kind of selection and appraisal role that librarians have always had in their libraries is now being sort of applied in this broader web kind of environment, and especially critical for health information that we can trust.
It's just the nature of our collections are changing. This year I taught the consumer health information course here for the first time in 7 years, because I had been doing other things during that earlier period, and I had taught the same course at the University of Toronto, but I was just blown away by how almost all of it now, I mean, health information is on the web. I think that health information is so critical to people that there's just been, there's such a demand for it, that field, it's certainly moved ahead probably in the fastest in full-text electronic journals.
Right.
And health sciences libraries are really transforming, but it's always made it a very exciting field to be in as a result.
That's must be an exciting class to be in, as the sources continue to change, and students can sort of pick things that they're particularly interested in. I want to also return to the issue of evidence-based librarianship. This idea of bringing the research and practice together. I mean, are there other things that we can be doing, or the public can be doing to sort of self-assess or try and sort of upgrade our own personal judgments about the information we consume?
I'm sure there are. I mean, I think that, and I think our field could really help people to develop, I guess, sort of the skeptical view of information, because just because it's on the web, or even if it's in a book, or if it's on paper, I mean, that's no reason just to believe it, right? We do have to help people, I think, develop their critical appraisal skills. I think that's, and I'm getting increasingly interested. Another thing that I would really love to develop here is this whole notion of knowledge translation. I think when we also did a seminar last year in evidence-based library and information practice, and we had someone who was involved in evidence-based social work come in and talk with us, Professor Mark Fraser from our School of Social Work here. They've taken a very different tack to their use of evidence in their field, which is that they are doing all sorts of manuals, like for evidence-based social work, which is very different. What we've been doing in library and information science is teaching people critical appraisal skills of the literature.
Right.
Now, again, these are in professional fields, and I think you were thinking maybe of, could we be doing this more broadly in society? And I think absolutely, like, it's, buyer beware. We have to be aware of the limitations of the information. Not that there are perfect answers, but there are certainly some types of information that are more reliable than others, and will help people. Well, we believe that better information will help people make better decisions, which will make, have all sorts of long-term benefits for the individual and for society. I mean, that's why we do what we do, right? Right.
There's a recent book out on how doctors think, in which the advice is to ask because there's so little time to do that diagnosis. You sort of have to leap to some sort of assessment, and then you every piece of evidence you collect actually is meant to support your initial inference. And so the best thing a patient or an information consumer can do is to ask, is there another possible explanation? And so this idea of the critical appraisal is something that probably comes about in the information literacy that children get in the K-12 environment, but as adults we need to continuously remind ourselves to ask questions and ask for that kind of evidence and then question it. And that's something we really need to promote actively.
A lot of those questions are not, I mean, the question itself is not complex, as you say. Is that Atal Gawande's book that you're thinking of?
I think so,
How Doctors Think, yeah. He's a really brilliant person, I think. And he really thinks very deeply on these issues. But it wouldn't be difficult to ask a doctor, well, is there any other possible explanation? We don't have to understand all the terms. On the other hand, I think we can give the public a lot of tools, like the Medical Library Association website. If you go to that, we have a whole series of what are web pages, but also available as paper brochures called Deciphering MedSpeak. So what those do is sort of, break down some of the terminology that the health professionals use, so that when the doctor responds, well, is there any other, to your question, is there any other explanation, you have a chance of understanding that. Yeah. But I truly think that, we need a lot of help in reforming our healthcare system, and I think what will really be the most powerful influence on reforming it is patient participation, family participation in healthcare decision making, and that really requires information, right. And it requires communication. And so all of the things you're suggesting, I think, are going to be part of that change. We all have to start taking more responsibility for this and thinking more about what our own health is and what it means to us and how much time and energy we're willing to put into taking care of it, and really seeing the big picture of what difference that's going to make for us in the longer term. Can I tell you about one more thing?
Absolutely.
Okay. The other project sort of fell into my lap because our current dean, Joanne Griffiths, was involved in this project, or she's on the advisory board, I believe, for the Americans for Libraries Council, which is sort of an advocacy group for the role of the public library. And it's a national nonprofit organization in New York, and they've got some very innovative ideas about new roles for libraries and librarians. And one of them is called lifelong access libraries. And what that is really looking at the role of public libraries as it relates to older adults. And if you think about the way we've organized library services, so we have, children's services and young adults, and then there's this very amorphous thing, adult services, right. And then services for much older people. So, you have the big print books and, right. Things that we associated with people for disabilities. Well, we have these aging baby boomers who are going to be healthy. Some of them will be very wealthy. Hopefully, many of them will be very wise. Yeah. But they will be capable of, and it will be required that they continue to make a very substantial contribution to society, because we're going to have a lot of people moving into that age group. Right. And, we just can't afford to lose all of that productive energy. Right. So what role could public libraries play in this? So we're involved in a project to look at that. There are a number of centers of excellence that have been identified that are doing really good work in that area in public libraries. And we're doing the evaluation for that project. And we're hosting they also run a training institute, a one-week-long training institute. So that was held, the first one was held in 2006 in Chapel Hill, and the second one will be held this August. So we'll have likely about 25 or 30 public librarians from all across the country who have been selected by the Americans for Libraries Council, and that project is joint between SILS and our Institute on Aging. So there'll be a number of faculty from the Institute on Aging who will be sharing the expertise on demographics of aging, on health promotion in aging, on diversity and aging, on business, because most people don't really retire. I hate to tell you that. They don't really retire. They keep doing something, usually working part-time or maybe consulting or maybe taking on a new career altogether. It could be a very creative time of life, and more of us are living longer. So we could live 30 years beyond retirement. So how are we going to use that bonus time that's coming along for us? So I'm very excited about the potential for libraries to really make a social difference here. I guess that's another one of my things that really motivates me, is I've always felt that libraries had such a strong and important social role, and whether it's with health information or just facilitating individual and broad social development. If you think of why Carnegie, when Carnegie sort of gave so much money, he gave some money to our school actually way back when, which is why we have an endowment today. Thank goodness he did. But I think he believed that the library was to be the instrument of continuous lifelong learning. And we kind of moved away from that a little bit, I think, at the end of World War II, when we became very information-based and reference service-based. But now I think that we should really rethink that and return to that and think about, how can the library be that focus for continuous lifelong learning, so that as people weave in and out of their career path and are looking for new things, that the library can be a real resource. And we've seen some of that, but I think there's so much more potential than we've explored so far. So that's about it, but it keeps me busy.
That's very exciting. I love that, and you've some really nice phrases there, and a grand vision. So thank you very much for fascinating sharing of some of your interests and ideas.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.